This week's episode of Steve's Outdoor Adventures is brought to you by Pendleton Ammunition, loading ammo, one round at a time. For all of you out there who have sent me emails wondering why we rarely whitetail hunt, this week's episode is for you. My clients need more whitetail hunting options, and I'm constantly seeking new outfitters and guides for our booking agency. It's just something that we're always doing. But I'm not a whitetail hunter. I just don't have the patience. So I needed to reach out to a resource that I haven't utilized often enough. Some of you might remember years ago, the original camera operator and editor and brains behind Steve's Outdoor Adventures Television was a man by the name of John Blesedell. John lives out in Ohio and for years has produced the Slunger Hollow Productions whitetail hunts. He and his friends have gone out and dedicated their entire hunting careers to trophy whitetail hunting and producing these DVDs that people had seen for years. But John had a whole other job those years, and that was filming and producing Steve's Outdoor Adventures. And while he doesn't do that for me anymore, I've utilized him over the years as someone who could go out and look at an outfitter. He knows what I need an outfitter to be, the quality I need them to be, the hunting quality that my clients need to see. And I know that I can get an honest opinion from John as to if an outfitter is good or bad. And with my resources very limited for whitetail hunts, currently our best whitetail hunts are in Wyoming, Montana, Saskatchewan. We even have another camp in Kansas. But I only really had 4 good whitetail hunts that I could offer our clients. And that just wasn't adequate enough. And I felt like I needed another Kansas operation to give us another option for hunters who wanted to book a high quality whitetail hunt. So I started talking to an outfitter, realized I am not the guy to go do that hunt. I don't have the patience to go sit in a tree or in a ground blind for hours and hours and hours. And don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking whitetail hunting. In fact, I have a lot of admiration for people who are dedicated to the craft of whitetail hunting, figuring the deer out, patterning them, where to place the stands, where are the trails, where's the scrape lines. There is so much that goes into that, including patience, something that I lack a lot of, and that makes me a liability when it comes time to do a whitetail hunt, because I'm not going to sit in that tree or that ground blind very long before I'm down on the ground running around and ruining a hunting area. So I know my limitations, and I knew that if I wanted to check this outfitter out properly, I was going to need to reach out to John Blesedell and ask him if he'd make this run to Kansas for me. This isn't the first time that I've had John go check out an outfitter. In fact, the first time was probably one of the most adventurous hunts that you could ever send someone on and ask them to give you an honest evaluation of an outfitter. I sent John up to Alaska to do a brown bear hunt in April on the snow. Now that's a hunt that we've done several times since, but we had never done one before, and we sent John into an area we'd never hunted with an outfitter we knew nothing about. Well, I'll tell you what, let's take a look back at John Blesedell's Alaskan brown bear hunt, and you see for yourself. This was really the beginning of some of our biggest Alaskan adventures that we've both booked and filmed for the television series. After producing Slunger Hollow Production for several years, as well as growing up in the whitetail woods near Chillicothe, Ohio, John Blesedell understands what it takes to be a successful whitetail hunter. He's taken some great deer. In fact, he's taken a lot of great deer, but he's taken a handful of world-class deer, including one Boone and Crockett record book buck. So I knew that when John got out to Kansas, it wouldn't take him long to figure out, A, did this outfitter have good private lands to hunt that did indeed have big trophy deer on it, and B, did this outfitter understand what it took and how to do it to make his clients successful, or at least give them a hand in being successful? And would this outfitter meet my quality control standards that we make sure that all of our outfitters and guides meet before we book clients with them. And when we come back from this commercial break, John Blesedell is headed into the field in Kansas in search of a trophy buck. This segment of Steve's Outdoor Adventures has been sponsored by Bergara Rifles, a passion for precision, every barrel, every rifle. This segment of Steve's Outdoor Adventures has been sponsored by Burris Optics. Find what matters. As I was saying before in the program, I've only got a handful of good whitetail hunting locations to book my clients. And this trip for John is all about finding me another quality outfitter for Steve's Outdoor Adventures to represent. And I chose Kansas because we get a lot of demand for Kansas whitetail hunts. Kansas is a hot spot. It's got big time genetics for deer. And even though the tags have to be obtained through a draw, they're relatively easy to get without any preference points. So I knew that we could get a tag. I had very good confidence based on the field reports and genetics for the area where the hunt was going to happen, that there should be some trophy deer there. And my hope was that John would get to this camp, experience a great hunt, and come back with a glowing report on the outfitter, the ranches, and the future for our clients at Steve's Outdoor Adventures.
Greg?
Yes.
Nice to meet you, buddy. John Blesedell.
Nice to meet you.
I'm looking forward to it. Never hunted Kansas before, so this...
As soon as we arrived at the lodge, I knew that the setup was going to be nice. Cabin's clean and comfortable, warm. Everything was laid out for you. Each hunter got his own room, which is nice. I've slept in bunkhouses with many other hunters before, and it was nice to have my own space. Food so far has been excellent. The outfitter has a cook that comes in and cooks us dinner every night. We have breakfast sandwiches ready for us in the mornings, and we take sack lunches out, which include a couple sandwiches, chips, anything you need. So we're well fed here, and it's very, very comfortable. So obviously this is the first time seeing this country. So we arrived very early in the morning. You know, the outfitter's got to get his hunters out. He set us up a good 45 minutes before dark. Took us right to our blind, which was nice because obviously if we were trying to find it in the dark, we'd have a struggle. The blinds were set up correctly. I've hunted out of blinds for many, many years. I know when one isn't right, and these were set up correctly. Wind was right for the location, and we waited on daylight. So as light started to crack, we were able to see a little bit through the binoculars, and it didn't take long until I spotted my first buck. I was actually kind of surprised. I was just doing some glassing across the hillside in front of me, and sure enough, I saw a mature whitetail walking along the hill in front of us. Looked out ahead of him, and he was trailing a doe about 20 yards. Things were starting to look good. So I ranged this buck at about 290 yards. The doe was gaining ground on us and getting closer. And obviously we're here to gather footage to show folks what this outfitter's all about. So we don't want to get too trigger happy. So we thought we'd let it play out. Unfortunately, the doe made her way back up the hill in front of us, and the buck kind of shortcut her and started getting further away. So feeling a little dejected, a very nice buck is out of rifle range. We look over to our right, and the cameraman actually spots two more bucks working up the same trail, trailing the same doe. Obviously, she was starting to come in. These bucks were interested. One of them was a smaller buck, and then one good one, very dark bodied. I've never seen a whitetail that dark in all of my life. And he had a very heavy 8-point rack. We were hoping to get him within range and take a shot at him. Okay, so we've got a lot going on in front of us. We've got two mature bucks out in front of us. One keeps going up the hill, down the hill, farther away, closer. And The cameraman and I are switching places in the blind several times because the angles kept changing. And I thought, well, my best odds are at this real dark-bodied, heavy 8-pointer. Unfortunately, the smaller buck went out in front of us, and the big 8 kind of dropped down in the trees and popped out of range again. So we sat there, watched him go up over the top, and all we could do is hope that the doe brought him back into that draw. All right, so temperature started heating up. We weren't seeing any more action that morning, and the sun was climbing higher, it was getting a little breezy, and we had absolutely nothing going on until just after 3 o'clock. That's when we got a surprise. So out of nowhere, we see 2 does coming over the hillside in front of us, and behind them is a good-looking buck.
This segment of Steve's Outdoor Adventures has been sponsored by Marathon Seat Covers. We've got you covered. This segment is sponsored by Adventure Armory. Rifle, scope, and ammunition packages shipped, ready to shoot. I personally just don't have the patience to be a stand hunter for whitetails, and that's the only way they hunt in this particular area of Kansas. No spot and stalk hunting. They're sitting in ground blinds or tree stands, and I just don't have the patience for it. Over the course of my hunting career, I have done exactly 2 whitetail hunts that required me to sit in a stand. The first one was in October in Wyoming. Outstanding outfitter, incredible properties, deer everywhere, and we had a plan that we would roll down into a big alfalfa field about 1 o'clock in the afternoon with a truck and set up a hay bale blind. Perfect plan. I had looked at that field the night before, and there were 200 deer in it. This is not a joke. That particular area of Wyoming has more whitetail than anywhere else I've ever been in my entire life. It is not uncommon to pull up to an alfalfa field and see literally hundreds of deer and sometimes 20 or 30 bucks in a single field. It's insane, and I've never seen anything like it anywhere else on the planet. So we went there. I thought I was going to spot and stalk hunt. Outfitter was showing me trail camera pictures of a big buck that they called Mad Dog. He's a big heavy 9 that was mature, and they wanted me to target him. But the best way for me to kill him with a muzzleloader was not to spot and stalk hunting. There was just too much open country. So we rolled in that hay bale blind, and I sat in it. And I had to sit there for several hours that night, but it was worth it.
Heads up. That's him, right? Yeah, okay. Got him. Yes! Yes! I got the big 9 that the guides were talking about.
Wyoming 9-point right there. So as you can see, that hunt was successful. It paid off to sit in the hay bale blind, but for me, it was painful. That is not my style of hunting. I killed a great buck, but I just don't have the patience to sit still. And I thought I'd pretty well learned my lesson, but just 1 month later, I'm back in Montana. I'm spot and stalk hunting for mule deer when we find a monster whitetail buck down in the river bottom fields. And I'm thinking, hey, I can spot and stalk this buck. I'm just going to go in the river bottom, go seek him out and kill him. And that's when my good friend Phil Phillips convinced me to just wait him out. We knew where the buck was coming back to, where he was going to travel through, and we had some rim rock that we could set up in before dark and let the buck come to us. I let him talk me into sitting still. He's an experienced whitetail hunter. He's killed lots of big deer on his place in Kansas. He's killed big deer in Montana. And I knew that I needed to let his experience guide me. Even though I'm a professional hunter, I don't know a lot about whitetail hunting, and Phil Phillips does. Phil tells me we're going to set up here, this is our best play. I did it. And, well, the rest is history. Once again, you can see right there, patience wins the day when you're whitetail hunting. And I am just not a patient guy. Killed the biggest whitetail buck of my life right there in Montana on that river bottom. And if I hadn't listened to Phil Phillips, I wouldn't have killed him, bar none. But still, I didn't want to sit still. I just don't have it in me. And that's why I've got John Blesedell out in Kansas, and he's going out for the first morning of his hunt, opening day of rifle deer season. And this is a hunt that we have anticipated for months. And now it's finally coming together for John. This segment of Steve's Outdoor Adventures has been sponsored by Pendleton Ammunition, loading bullets, one round at a time. If you'd like to book this week's adventure for yourself, give our office a call. We will gladly take your calls, answer your questions, and help you book the hunting or fishing adventure of a lifetime. In this part of Kansas, there's a lot of CRP, brushy creek bottoms, and open crop fields. The possibility for being able to take a longer range shot is there. It's just one of those things you have to be prepared for. So on this trip, John went into the field with a Bergara B14 series rifle topped with the Eliminator laser scope. Now this scope has extra crosshairs for distance, and we've done custom load development at Pendleton Ammunition, and he's shooting 160 grain bullets that are capable of taking a deer well beyond 500 yards. And it's the ideal rifle, scope, and ammunition setup for this type of hunting in this place of Kansas.
So we're back in the action. This buck actually outruns the does and gets down into the bottom below us. He's probably within 300 yards. The problem that the cameraman and I both had was the sun was in our face. I was really struggling to pick this buck up in the scope. When he came up over the hill, I saw that he was wider than his ears. I assumed that he had a big body from 500 yards away. I made that assumption. And he dropped down on the bottom. I spent the rest of the time trying to get a shot at this buck, and he wasn't really cooperating. He was meandering around down on that bottom, but he finally popped out in an open about 250 yards out. So I've already made the decision to shoot this deer. I'll be honest, I didn't really pay much attention to his rack after he came over the top of the hill. I got the crosshairs settled on his chest at around 250 yards, and I squeezed off the shot. So one thing that the outfitter here does, which I think is really cool, is that he asks the clients to stay in their blinds. This is for their safety. And also they're not familiar with the property. They don't know where the boundaries are. So we honored those wishes, and we sent a text message to the guide. He's very responsive. And we told him we'd shot a buck, and he said, I'll be right out there to meet you. And he showed up in the electric buggy and met us at the blind.
How's it going? Buck down?
Make a long story short, see that little grass finger right there?
So we worried about the buck maybe escaping through a draw that we couldn't see from the blind. Otherwise, we would have seen him get out of that bottom. So we were pretty confident that he was laying down there somewhere, but you never know until you find him. And as we pulled up on the buggy, I was watching through the bottom, and sure enough, I saw a deer laying there. So we hopped out and headed towards him. I'll be honest, the problem that we had was that the closer we got, the smaller this buck's rack looked. And it didn't take long to realize that I had jumped the gun on the judgment of this deer. After seeing two mature whitetails, I had made a bad call on a younger buck, which was a mistake. But we did the outfitter a favor, because this is actually a cull buck. He didn't have brow points. He probably wasn't going to amount to anything. So in the end, we helped him out, and it was a great experience.
So everybody gets the fever at some point in time or makes a bad decision. John Blesedell is an experienced whitetail hunter, and he just plain got excited on the first morning in Kansas and pulled the trigger on the wrong buck. It happens. It's one of those things that anyone who's hunted deer or elk or bear long enough will make an error, and that doesn't detract from the quality of this hunt. Bottom line, over the course of the next couple of days, John and Raymond rode around with the outfitter, looked at his stands, looked at the land, looked at deer, looked at all of the possibilities that our clients would have, saw some other deer, looked at trail camera pictures from the outfitter to see what kind of deer were in inventory, and we realized quickly that this was indeed the type of outfitter that we wanted to represent. This indeed was an outfitter that would do a good job for our clients and that we wanted to represent at Steve's Outdoor Adventures. And I know that when I send John out on his next whitetail hunt, he's going to be a little bit more selective. He's not going to jump the gun, and he's going to kill a great big buck and fulfill his dream of taking a big Kansas trophy deer or maybe an Ohio monster. Hey, maybe even a Saskatchewan trophy whitetail buck. John's a diehard whitetail hunter, and I know that he won't make that same mistake twice. He's human, but he's also professional. You know, if you've ever thought about booking a guided big game hunting adventure like the Kansas whitetail hunt or an elk hunt in Colorado or maybe a moose hunt in Alaska, give our office a call. We will take your calls, answer your questions, and help you book the hunting or fishing adventure of a lifetime. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this week's show, but please remember to join us again next week when we bring you another exciting episode of Steve's Outdoor Adventures.